All right, today we're looking at a medication that's, well, it's a true double-edged sword in psychiatry. We're talking about phenelzine. It's an incredibly powerful antidepressant, one that can be absolutely life-changing for some people. But, and this is a huge but, it comes with risks so serious they demand a total lifestyle change. Let's dig in and find out why.
So just imagine for a second. You've tried all the usual treatments for depression or anxiety. You've been through a bunch of different medications, SSRIs, SNRIs, you name it. But nothing has given you real, lasting relief. This is the incredibly frustrating reality for people with treatment-resistant depression, and it's a situation that calls for a different, much more powerful kind of solution.
And that solution, funny enough, is often found in an older class of drugs. So, enter phenelzine, which you might know better by its brand name Nardil. It's part of a group called Monoamine Oxidase Inhibitors, or MAOIs for short. Now, there's a reason we call it old school. It was mostly replaced by newer drugs that had fewer risks. But even though it's not the first thing doctors reach for anymore, for some people, it's the only thing that works.
Yeah, doctors really reserve phenelzine for these very specific, very hard-to-treat cases. It's a classic go-to for what's called atypical depression, which is a subtype with particular symptoms like your mood lifting in response to positive events. But it's also a total lifeline for those with that treatment-resistant depression we mentioned. And it's even considered one of the most effective treatments out there for severe social anxiety.
So how does this old-school powerhouse actually pull off these really dramatic results? Well, the magic, or, the science, is right there in its name, MAO inhibition. Let's take a look at how this creates a completely different way to boost mood.
To get how it works, you first have to meet the enzyme monoamine oxidase, or MAO. Just think of MAO as the brain's cleanup crew. Its whole job is to find and break down the key chemicals that regulate our mood. We're talking serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. It keeps everything in balance by just clearing out the excess.
Okay, so here's what phenelzine does. First, it comes in, binds to those MAO enzymes, and just shuts them down. And I mean irreversibly. They're out of the game. Second, with that cleanup crew totally out of commission, the whole breakdown process just grinds to a halt. And the result? You get a massive increase in the levels of serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine just hanging around in the brain, which is what finally brings relief from that depression and anxiety.
But this incredible power comes at a really, really high price. We're going to pivot now to the single most dangerous part of this medication. And get this, it has nothing to do with your brain. It has everything to do with what's on your dinner plate.
Taking phenelzine means you are at risk of something called a hypertensive crisis. This is a sudden, dangerously high spike in your blood pressure that can actually be fatal. This is not a minor side effect we're talking about. This is a full-blown medical emergency.
And what triggers it? An amino acid called tyramine, which is found in a lot of common foods. When tyramine gets into the system of someone on an MAOI, it causes this catastrophic release of norepinephrine, which sends blood pressure skyrocketing to levels that can cause a stroke or a heart attack.
Here is exactly why that diet is so critical. Remember our cleanup crew, MAO? Well, it also works in your gut. Normally, MAO breaks down the tyramine from your food right then and there before it can get into your bloodstream. But with phenelzine blocking that MAO, the tyramine gets a free pass directly into your bloodstream, and that's where it can wreak absolute havoc.
And listen, this isn't about avoiding some obscure, weird ingredients. We're talking about really common, everyday foods. Things like aged cheeses, cheddar, Swiss, cured meats like salami and pepperoni, soy sauce, sauerkraut, tap beer, red wine. Even overripe bananas are on the list. The rule's pretty simple. You have to eat only fresh foods and strictly avoid anything aged, fermented, or pickled. It's a huge commitment. Now, the journey to feeling better on phenelzine takes real commitment, not just with your lifestyle, but with patience too. The treatment usually settles into a maintenance dose that's somewhere between 45 to 90 milligrams a day, and that's usually split into several smaller doses to keep the medication levels nice and steady. But you don't just jump to that dose. Doctors start you off really low, and it can take 2 to 4 weeks just to start feeling a difference. The full, really life-changing effects often don't kick in for 6 weeks or even longer. You can imagine that demands a huge amount of trust in the process, especially for someone who's already struggling so much.
The diet danger is definitely the most famous risk, but believe me, it is not the only one. Phenelzine comes with a whole list of other cautions and common side effects that patients and doctors need to manage very carefully.
A lot of these might actually sound familiar if you know anything about antidepressants.
We're talking about things like dizziness, especially when you stand up too fast, some pretty significant drowsiness, trouble sleeping or insomnia, and yeah, unfortunately, weight gain and sexual dysfunction are also fairly common challenges that just have to be weighed against the benefits.
So beyond the food and the side effects, there is another huge danger zone: drug interactions. Combining phenelzine with the wrong medication can be every bit as deadly as eating the wrong food.
It's absolutely critical to understand that you cannot mix phenelzine with other antidepressants like SSRIs. If you do, it can cause a toxic condition called serotonin syndrome. Even super common over-the-counter decongestants that you'd find in cold medicine are strictly forbidden. And the list just goes on. Certain painkillers, even some cough suppressants, are a no-go.
So, with all these risks, you have to wonder, where does a drug like phenelzine even fit in today's world of modern medicine? Well, its role has become highly specialized. It's reserved as a powerful tool for very specific cases.
You know, this quote really nails it. Phenelzine is just not a drug for a general practitioner to prescribe on a whim. But in the hands of a specialist, for a patient with one of those really tough-to-treat conditions we talked about, it can be nothing short of a miracle.
So, in the end, it all comes down to this one major trade-off. On one side, you have a medication with incredible effectiveness, one that can work when literally nothing else has. But on the other side, you've got these life-altering diet rules, a long list of dangerous drug interactions, and a pretty significant list of side effects.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? For someone whose life has been completely crippled by severe depression or anxiety, for someone who's tried everything else without any hope, is this huge, monumental risk worth the potential reward? That's the incredibly complex calculation that doctors and their patients have to make every single day.